I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's Monday, October 21st, 2013. This is a committee of the whole. It is 9:48 in the evening, and we're starting our budget process. Clerk Spencer, I would ask you to please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Gutenkopf. Here. Deuter. Here. Dunn.
Here.
Leader. Here. Polonsky. Here. Graham.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Honquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
Do you have to call me for a committee of the whole?
Done that.
I'm here.
Okay, Mayor.
All right. Really?
For the record,
Hi.
Mayor
Here.
Morley.
Okay, 14 present. We have a quorum. Okay, agenda item number 2, public comments. Clerk Spencer, is there anybody at this time who has signed up for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one person that signed up, Gilbert R. Fisher, 586 North Van Auken.
Okay, Mr. Fisher, you know where the microphone is. I'd ask that you keep in mind the instructions I gave at the previous meeting as they still stand. Mr. Fisher, the floor is yours.
I am Gilbert R. Fisher, 586 North Van Auken Street, Elmhurst, Illinois. And I've got my message from you loud and clear. You're raising the taxes on my house again next year. You are my government. You pledge allegiance to the Stars and Stripes. You represent the government of the United States of America. And yet again, you are raising my taxes on my house. My house has been paid for since 1989. I have 2 cars they're paid for. I have 2 credit cards. I owe nothing on them. My wife and I are not in debt. We don't owe a penny. I worked 37 and a half years for the United States Postal Service in Lombard, Illinois. When I hired on, I took the most I could take out for my retirement, so I have the highest paid postal retirement you can get. I was a letter carrier on Route 18. Walking house to house, delivering mail. As of right now, my retirement does not cover the cost that I can pay to own my house. My wife is 78 years old, and she went back to work to help pay the taxes on our house. And yet you, again, my government of the United States of America, is raising the taxes on my house again. We can't afford it, period. I worked all my life, my wife worked all her life, and now the government of the United States is taxing us out of our house. My government, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Good night.
Clerk Spencer?
That's all that signed in, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anybody else in the audience this evening who did not have an opportunity to sign up on our sign-up sheet that would like to address the council? I see one person, Mr. Pagash. Please feel free to approach the microphone and address the council. As I reminded Mr. Fisher, please keep in mind the instructions from the previous meeting as they do still stand.
My name is Claude Poggett, 566 West Gladys. I really didn't have an intent to have any comment on this budget discussion. But I think after what occurred prior to this, what I say I truly believe. Mr. Norm said 270 people signed a petition, and what really does that matter compared to the 40-some thousand people in this town? He didn't think much of it. I've got 14 people up here. They're going to listen to every group that comes up here, and they're going to say the same thing as the alderman said. Let's just add a couple stories. It's only another $3 million for the people to pay. Mr. York, well, we got to increase that pension fund. That's just another $41. See, but I got 14 people that are going to say that. Norm, what percentage of that is of 44,000? All these groups are going to come up. They don't have enough money. They're bare bones. They can't afford a thing. But if you allow them to increase their taxes, they're going to be able to survive. And 14 people are going to nod their head. Go on. Here's your increase. But the 44,000 will pay for what 14 people vote on. Mueller said that's what you do. And the people will just have to bear up under it. They'll have to get it from somewhere. John Robiletti was just in here. He's going to get a tax. He's going to get an increase in his Social Security. $16. York just wiped that out. See? And these 5% salary increases, where do they exist? They don't exist in the world beyond this room. So just vote for it, as you always have. Just vote that yes. And don't forget, as my aldermen always point out to me, we have no relationship to the Park District, we have no relationship to the county, we have no relationship to the state, and we have no relation to the school board. So what they do, we cannot control. But you can control what you can control. And as long as you keep on adding increases, you go back to the people,
Mr.
and you
Pagash,
tell them
you're over 3
where
minutes.
they're
I'd
going to
ask you
get the
wrap it
money
up.
from. I hope somewhere along the line, you say no to one of these groups, because they're going to just ask for more.
Okay, that concludes public comments. City Manager Grabowski, Mr. Pagash, can I ask you a favor? Can you leave that door open for us when you leave?
Since I already know the answers, there's no need to stick.
I think he left it open.
He did.
Please note that, Clerk Spencer,
Heard?
for the record. Okay, that wraps up public comments on to agenda item number 3, business.
Point of order, point of order.
Yes, sir.
Did we just have a joke at the expense of a member of the public?
No, Alderman
I
Gudenkauf.
certainly hope that wasn't what I heard.
And your point of order?
That was it.
Okay. Business before the committee, review of budget fiscal year 2014. This is to start, as I mentioned in our last meeting, this is the start of our budget process. As the council is aware, this really concludes our shifting of our budget process and aligning our fiscal year with our calendar year. City Manager Grabowski, along with staff, are prepared to present this evening. We have a whole host on the back of our agenda of things that we were hoping to get to tonight, but I think it was kind of an aggressive idea. In talking to city staff earlier, I told them it was my intent not to go past 10 o'clock, which gives us about 3 minutes. I don't think that's going to happen, but I am going to turn it over to City Manager Grabowski, and hopefully we'll get through Historical Museum and Fire Protection. City Manager Grabowski, is that the hope for this evening?
That's the hope.
Okay. All right. So it's about 10 o'clock. Let's see how far we get. City Manager Grabowski, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to provide a little introduction to the budget. I know everyone's had their budget for a little while and was able to review it, and I'm going to pare my comments down for the sake of time. We are pleased to present the 2014 fiscal year budget, which of course, as the mayor said, is now the calendar year as well. Certainly, Director Gaston and Assistant Director Trezine deserve a tremendous amount of credit for doing this. As I said a week ago or two, it sounds a lot easier than it is. Not only did we change the fiscal year, but we also are presenting the budget in a little more friendly presentation using Excel and portrait orientation for department budget sheets. Typically, though, it is organized in the manner that it has been in the past, and I won't go through that too much. But I will note that due to the 8-month budget year that we will be coming out of, it's tough to compare the current year budget to the 2014 budget. And so what we did, where there was typically an increase of 5% and more than $2,500, we have a justification form within the budget. However, all line items where the increase was in excess of 5% and more than $2,500 due to moving from the 8-month fiscal year to the 12-month fiscal year, we only noted with an asterisk rather than justification forms in each one. So with that, I will jump into just some summary comments that in the general fund, which is of course the major operating fund of the city, the proposed budget expenditures are $54,891,124. Proposed revenues to the general fund are $55,521,555 for fiscal year 14, which provides the opportunity for a contribution of fund balance of $630,000 roughly. And that the proposed general fund balance at the end of the fiscal year 2014 would be $16,270,810. That's significant because this level continues compliance with the city's fund balance goal policy of 25% to 33% of operating expenses. Changes in this year's general fund continue to focus on high-quality service delivery in the most cost-efficient manner. In fiscal year 2013, the total number of budgeted full-time employees was reduced from 259 to 265, was reduced to 259 from 265. And we continue to review each position as it opens up in an effort to reduce future costs of pension and other benefits that are associated with full-time employees. To that end, this year, an office assistant position in the building department opened up in fiscal year 2013, and we were able to put someone in there from an agency, which was our goal. Also, a compensation study is currently underway and is expected to be completed and presented to the Finance Committee and the City Council by the end of fiscal year 2013. Next, we believe, and we've certainly listened and found out that timely and accurate communication to the public and disseminating information in the most effective and efficient manner is a high priority in Elmhurst. Therefore, the proposed 2014 budget includes the addition of one full-time employee in the city manager's office to coordinate all communication activity of the city. The proposed position is actually a conversion of a part-time position, which is the visitors and tourism budget, to a full-time position, and adding critical components of external communications and coordination of citywide communication. The full-time position will be partially funded with hotel-motel tax revenue, as the current part-time position in visitors and tourism budget is. Also, the proposed 2014 budget includes filling the assistant zoning administrator position, which was initially vacated in fiscal year 05 and budgeted but not filled in fiscal year 2012. This position has become critical at this time due to increased development activity and the need for backup in that department. We are slowly increasing service levels as revenue projections appear to be increasing, and as the economy recovers and housing values climb, the city will continue to look at other service level increases. I'd like to touch briefly on revenues. The proposed revenues for fiscal year 2014 total $120,909,647. And as indicated in the chart in your budget, the largest revenue source is the property sales and utility taxes, which comprise roughly 37% of total revenues. Service charges are roughly 19.9% of total revenues and are mostly water and sewer service charges. Just as a repeat from last year, but certainly worthwhile to repeat, that we continue to monitor legislative proposals that would change how revenues are distributed, especially the sales tax, as the state legislature seems to look at that annually. I'm not going to detail the individual revenue taxes unless someone wants me to highlight anything. But I would highlight one, and that's in the licenses and permits. Certainly Elmhurst remains a community where people want to live, which is demonstrated by the 100 permits for new homes issued last year. We estimate the same for 2014, and that permit fee budget for 2014 is projected at $2,096,500, and again contemplates 100 new homes and several commercial projects. Again, unless anyone wants me to highlight the other revenue streams, I would just conclude by saying overall there are a number of changes to this budget, the most significant being the shift to the January 1st fiscal year from the May 1 fiscal year. EAV in Elmhurst continues to drop, unfortunately, which was somewhat expected due to the economy and the timing of property assessments. However, looking at the real estate market, home prices appear to be climbing, with homes turning over in timely fashion, and the city budget will not realize this effect for another year or so. We do feel this is a sound fiscal plan for the city for the next fiscal year and request the council's positive consideration. And again, I'd like to thank Marilyn and Tom, along with all the department directors, for their input and cooperation during the budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. On to the Historical Museum.
Yes, sir.
And I would suggest to the council, as we've done in the past, since I've been on the council, we'll certainly ask the questions that we have, and if we get to a point or an impasse where there's additional information or a question that cannot be answered, we'll note it for our circle back list, and then at the end of this budget process, we'll go through and city staff will provide details of questions they can't answer this evening. So, well, I think they're going to tell us.
Are we set? Are we okay?
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kathy Jordan, and I am the newly elected president of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. Actually, as of tomorrow, it will be 2 weeks. I'd like to share a short review of the history of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation for newly elected city officials. In 2007, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation was established as a non-for-profit 501c3 organization created by the merger of the former Elmhurst Historical Museum Foundation and the City of Elmhurst Historical Commission. The focus of this citizen-driven group is to bring community support to the Elmhurst Historical Museum and the Churchville Schoolhouse. The mission of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is to stimulate broad-based support for local history, the Elmhurst Historical Museum, and the Churchville Schoolhouse through advocacy, education, and fundraising. We currently have 18 foundation board members and can have no more than 21 members. 7 foundation board members are appointed by the mayor, and 14 other candidates are nominated by a nominating committee of the foundation board. I truly believe you are only as good as the people you are working with, and I would like to recognize the foundation board members who are here this evening. In the back, Cheryl Kopecki, Dr. John DeVries, and Kathy Siegert. Thank you for sticking it out. I appreciate it. They are truly a dedicated, hardworking group of professional people who give 150% to the Elmhurst Foundation. We are fortunate to have these people on the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. This has been a very busy past 6 months. The Heritage Foundation Board is a working board and very result-driven. Through our fundraising efforts, the foundation has provided support to meet expenses associated with the museum's exhibits, as well as with some of the museum education programs open to the public. In May of 2013, the Foundation Board was presented with a grant funding request for $107,300, and it was unanimously approved by our board. Within the $107,300 was included $20,000 for exhibits, that's annual exhibits and programs, $3,500 for public programs, including summer kickoff event and autumn Churchville Schoolhouse open house, $25,200 public programs, or in other words, a half-time salary of a community programs coordinator, $3,300 development and fundraising consultant fee, $5,000 for interns, graduate student or recent graduate, and $50,000 development of a new exhibit about Elmhurst history. In addition, as of September 1st, the Elmhurst Foundation has provided $2,892 for buses for school field trips. We feel this is a valuable service to the children of our community. Without the offer of free busing, school groups would not be able to make visits to the museum or the schoolhouse. Most of the trips this past year have been to the schoolhouse partly because the schoolhouse can accommodate only one class of students at a time, and most schools have 3 to 4 classes at a designated grade level. Grants of $100 were given to 8 local schools that had participated in the Ruth Strand poster contest. 6 of those schools were District 205 schools: Conrad Fisher, Emerson, Hawthorne, Jackson, Jefferson, Lincoln, and 2 were parochial schools, Emmanuel Lutheran and Visitation. The expenses related to the poster contest are paid for by an endowment from the Ruth Strand to promote the study of local history. The foundation and our development committee has taken on the task of a capital campaign, Visionary Voices. This is the foundation's first capital campaign, and it is a specific campaign for a specific purpose, to raise $250,000 for a new exhibit about Elmhurst history. Currently, the campaign is in its public phase. This follows our 4-month quiet phase in which our campaign committee members met one-on-one with prospective donors to ask for their support. We are happy to share that our campaign is going very well, and we are at more than the halfway mark due to the generosity of donors and lead donors. We are confident that we will reach our goal of $250,000 by the fall of 2014. This total provides $150,000 for the new exhibit and $100,000, which is the normal 2-year operating assistance provided to the museum by the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. In addition, all proceeds from the Visionary Voices Gala being held on November 2nd at Drury Lane will go toward funding the new exhibit. The new exhibit will replace the Visions of Home exhibit installed in 1986. The new exhibit will utilize and provide a variety of ways and techniques to tell the Elmhurst story, including integration of the latest multimedia technologies, including touch screens, interpretive panels, videos, artifacts, and multiple voice approach, which will allow Elmhurst citizens to tell their own story. The new exhibit is intended to become a real attraction for the museum and to serve and function as a continually evolving story as additions will be made on a regular basis. We will be able to stretch our dollars to maximum by using creative approaches to utilizing resources, donations, skilled labor, and significant partnerships. We continue to build partnerships. The Elmhurst Art Museum, the Elmhurst Garden Club, City Center, York Theater, and more recently, the Elmhurst Community and Elmhurst Business Community with the upcoming Visionary Voices Gala and Capital Campaign. The Elmhurst Business Community and community leaders have supported the gala and the campaign through either a monetary donation, an in-kind donation, or actively serving on the gala or capital campaign committee. These partnerships are invaluable. In April, our membership program had 215 memberships, finally breaking the glass ceiling of 200 memberships. These memberships represent approximately 380 to 400 adults, not including children. Membership renewal is continual and ongoing and is used as a tool to cultivate donors. This year, we implemented a 2-year membership pilot program, and it has been very well received. It will save time, materials, and money in the renewal process while adding continuity in the membership program. In addition to invitations to special receptions, foundation newsletters, a 10% discount at the museum gift shop, members were offered discounts on events, and working with our advocacy committee, the first fee-based exhibit reception was implemented, charging $10 to attend an exhibit reception. Members and donors could attend the exhibit reception free. We also provided an event that gave members a $10 discount, which encouraged people to become members. We are planning more of these fee-based events, building on our membership and marketing goal, being a member provides value. The Elmhurst Museum staff is currently reviewing, modifying, and updating a strategic plan from 2005. Staff, 3 foundation members, and the city manager, Jim Grabowski, have been involved with this project, and upon completion of the updated strategic plan, the Heritage Foundation will have a retreat and develop long-term goals to support the new strategic plan. It is critical that we work together in order to succeed. Our advocacy committee provides exhibit receptions, the community-wide Ruth Strand contest, candidates' educational evenings, and many community outreach activities. The advocacy committee and the Heritage Foundation together provide additional benefits to the city. We are your cheerleaders in the community and business community, always positive and constructive, raising awareness, networking, and building bridges of good faith for the museum, schoolhouse, and for the city of Elmhurst. We are always advocating, educating, and fundraising to make a department of the city the best it can be. Visits to the museum or schoolhouse provide cultural and educational opportunities for citizens and economic development opportunities for the city. We are continually reaching out to the community, striving to gain trust, credibility, and support. These attributes you cannot see or touch, but it is happening every time one of our foundation members tells its story and promotes the museum and the one-room schoolhouse. I believe our Heritage Foundation is the extra added value to the city of Elmhurst, and that is priceless. Before closing, I would like to thank the museum staff for their support and hard work. Without their help, we would not be able to accomplish as much as we do, nor would we be able to continue to grow as a foundation. I encourage all aldermen to become members of the Heritage Foundation and to attend the gala on November 2nd at Drury Lane. Your support is critical to our work for our town, our history, and our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to present the museum's budget proposal this evening. The proposal provides the necessary resources for completion of several projects and for important progress on some other projects that have already started. Before I move on to the budget proposal itself, and I do realize it's late, I'd like to report on some of the museum services during this year of 2013. The services continue to be provided 7 days a week, daytime and evening. These range from school programs to reference services, and from guided gallery tours to public programs for adults and families. They take place on-site at the Historical Museum, they take place at Churchville Schoolhouse, and at off-site locations such as schools all around town, Elmhurst Public Library, retirement homes, and so forth. As you know, exhibits at the museum continued to connect with people from surrounding areas as well as with people from Elmhurst. For instance, this summer's exhibit, Shudder to Think, was booked by the Chicago Cultural Center after closing here in Elmhurst. It's open at the Cultural Center through January of 2014. And at this time, the staff is completing final work on a new in-house exhibit about Carl Sandburg's life here in Elmhurst that will open on November 8th. So we look forward to that opening very, very shortly. Recent highlights for marketing and promotion at the museum include feature stories in the Tribune and the Sun-Times. WTTW and WBEZ this summer produced feature stories for television and radio, and the museum also started a monthly regular email news blast that goes to approximately 1,000 addresses. Services at Churchville Schoolhouse continued to grow this year, but especially during the prime spring school season. For instance, half-day or full-day programs were presented to 25 different school classes during the month of May last spring. And then in the area of collections, I'm pleased to report that the public now has online access to photographs and historical information of approximately 500 items in museum collections, and our plans are for additional materials and information to continue to go online through 2014. Several major projects are on tap for the coming year. I'm working closely with Kathy and the board of the foundation, as she mentioned, on the capital campaign. We're at about the halfway point of our campaign to raise $250,000 to make possible a new exhibit about Elmhurst history. That campaign, as she said, is the first capital campaign for our board, and I'm happy to see that board members have responded so positively. Work on that new exhibit itself has been ongoing for several months. The exhibit will include extensive interactives, media, and other means for visitors to engage with quite a few aspects of Elmhurst history. It'll also include some tremendous artifacts that will bring joy to visitors at the museum, and I believe will also create pride in Elmhurst. A project to improve the museum's HVAC systems will be completed in 2014 as well. This $283,000 project is funded entirely by a state grant for museums on public property. And the update of the museum's strategic plan, as Kathy mentioned, will be completed in early 2014. I'm looking for public input into the museum's direction. So this project is at a stage currently where focus groups are being conducted in order to capture some of those recommendations and observations from residents. And finally, I'm anxious for the museum to grow its calendar of public programs. Already on tap for 2014 are a silent film series, public gallery tours, lectures, and special projects with District 205 and other schools. The first public program of 2014 will be a grand blowout on Sunday, January 5th, to celebrate the 136th anniversary of Carl Sandburg's birth. So I hope to see you all there. Now on to the budget proposal. I'd like to review some of the figures that are on pages 159 and 160 in the budget book. Starting with salary and wages, it's account 451-10-01 on page 159. This provides for continued operations at the current level of staffing. That budget provides for 3 full-time and 4 part-time positions at the Historical Museum. Does not provide for any full-time or part-time positions that have gone unfilled in the past 3 or 4 years. And account 3060, conservation of artifacts, provides for repair, cleaning, and restoration of some artifacts that will be displayed in the new Elmhurst exhibit. This conservation work is necessary to exhibit those pieces in the coming years. Account 5001, building maintenance and repair, provides for necessary work in public areas of the museum, such as restrooms, such as a broken pocket door in the entry foyer, lighting in galleries and the foyer, and other important steps to improve visitor experience within the museum itself. Account 6039, EHF supplemental funds, are private funds that are requested of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation for specific purposes. This will include $20,000 for the museum's annual exhibits program, $5,500 for public programs like the recent Heritage Day at Churchville Schoolhouse, and $100,000 for completion of the new exhibit about Elmhurst history. And finally, account 8023, building improvements, shows $100,000. This is accounted for as the balance of the $283,000 state grant for HVAC upgrades at the museum. At its museum next week, the Public Works Committee will review a contract for the beginning of that work. So I'd like to thank all of you for supporting the services of the museum. I'd like you to know that the staff and the board of the foundation and I look forward to continuing to improve services at the museum, and I'll be happy to take any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Burhager. At this time, is there anybody on the dais who has any questions for Mr. Burhager with regard to the museum? Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kathy, congratulations on your appointment. It's wonderful. That's just a quick comment. I apologize. Brian, you may have glossed over it. I may have missed it. I apologize. The 9501, the data processing jumped from 70 on the 8-month side to 119 for the projected 2014, but the actuals and if you go back a couple of years, how did the expenditures jump up to $120,000? For data processing, understand that it's spread out amongst it.
Finance Director Gaston can answer that because it's prorated out.
Run to the litter?
Deep in the back of your budget book, page 358, the bottom half, shows the allocation for our information technology department. That's one budget that is totally allocated out to the departments. So when you see that line in any department, you will see an increase because you can see the estimate for 2013 is $1,176,000, and the proposed budget is almost $2 million. So there is an increase on that line, and you can see how we allocate it to the various departments. It's on a percentage, but it's essentially based on the number of pieces of equipment each of the departments has. So it does look like an increase in the Historical Museum budget. It is a line that, in this case, Brian doesn't have control over. It is all in the IT budget. Hopefully.
When we get to that, I'll probably ask some more questions, but thanks for clarifying, Marilyn. Appreciate it.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question about the visitor tourism position, because I want to make sure I understand what City Manager Grabowski said, and this relates directly to the museum's budget because the part-time visitor tourism position is in the museum's budget. Did you say that you're taking that part-time position, making it a full-time position, and making it more of a communications type job that will move to administration? Is that how you
Yes.
described it?
Yes, we would be adding the duties of communications and some marketing to that position, moving it to the manager's office. And what we'd like to talk about that under the administration budget rather than now.
Well, the reason I bring it up now is because I want to understand the salary budget lines for the museum department, because I want to make sure, it doesn't look like it's been taken out of this line.
If I may add something here, that particular position, the visitor and tourism part-time job, is actually in the visitor and tourism budget, which is on page 168. So that position, that half-time position, is not in the museum personnel budget. It's on page 168 in the visitor and tourism budget.
So did the salary line only increase the roughly 3% over, because of the short budget? I'm not doing that much math in my head. There's an increase from last year to the current fiscal year, and then from the current fiscal year to the proposed fiscal
Right.
year. But because of the short year, it looks like it's a greater than 3% increase. Is that correct?
Right.
So even though the position has been reporting to the museum, that budget's not in this.
That budget is not in this, and I believe, if I understand City Manager correctly, the new communications specialist position will be reporting to the City Manager's office.
And that's not reflected yet in the org
is-
charts.
That is correct. Does that answer?
Yeah, because it's showing still in the org chart, which is why I wanted to make sure I understood it.
Right, and we actually left it that way and budgeted that way simply because it hasn't been approved yet, although we did put it in the budget.
Thank you.
Alderman Bram, then I'll go to Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of questions, or two or three questions. one of which, I lost my page here, on page 160, line item 60-39, the EHMF endowment. I mean, this is showing the expense of 125.5. Where, I assume that there's a corresponding revenue stream for that, and I was looking on page 106 where I thought I would find, 105, 106, where I would find most of the revenues, and I wasn't finding that amount totaling the 125.5.
Okay, yes, you will see it on page 106. It is going to be line 371.14, I'm sorry, no, wait a minute, I apologize.
1400?
1400. You see 166,000.
Okay.
That includes the 125.5 plus 30,000 that's in payroll line for the educator, I'm sorry, Brian, what's that position called?
Community Programs Coordinator position.
Yes, that position, and the intern position of $5,000 is in our payroll lines. The total income that's anticipated from the foundation is the 166,000, but it's showing up in the Historical Museum budget on 3 different lines.
Okay, now that's crystal clear. Wasn't as crystal clear looking at it, just looking for a one-to-one. A couple minor, well, maybe not so minor. One minor question being, again, on page 160. In the grand scheme of the Elmhurst budget, it's pennies, pretty much literally. But on line item under other expenses, 60-11, the proposed budget amount is increasing for conferences, seminars, and training from approximately a few $100s the last few years to $4,100. What is the necessity, I guess, to, I didn't see a J form, justification form in there, for pretty much 10 times the amount of conferences and training in previous years?
That account was reduced to $500 a number of years ago when there were some drastic reductions, $100,000 across-the-board reduction of the museum budget. So that training and seminars was virtually eliminated at the Historical Museum for the past 4 years, I believe. So there's been no training, no networking with our national organizations, with our regional organizations. The figure that's in the budget for this year reinstates funds for participation at, by professional staff at national conferences and also state and area-wide conferences and training.
Thank you. Last 2 questions, one of which I want, it's actually more of a comment. I'm glad to hear that the museum is able to, well, I'm making an assumption, acquire a grant or applying for the grant for some of the improvements. That's great news. That's good to hear. It definitely takes some of the burden off of not only the members of the museum, but Elmhurst as a whole. This is going to be a general comment, but just for my ease of understanding, I've been skipping looking at 2013 since it's a shortened cycle, and looking at 2012/13 actuals and comparing them relatively to 2014. If I look, and even if I minus the differences in the building improvements and the increase in the data processing, the total museum cost is still about, I don't know, $100,000 to $145,000 more than 2 years ago in 12/13. I didn't notice anything, and maybe this is all nickel and dimes adding up to about $140,000. But is there anything that I'm missing significantly that's contributing to that increase in 2 years?
I don't know if you're including the account 6039, the Heritage Foundation.
That could have been the
Grants.
difference, or the
That might
majority of
make
the
a
difference.
significant-
About 80,000 out of that, about 130, 140,000. Okay, that might have been the difference. Thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to start out with a couple thank yous. Thank you to President Jordan and to past President Evans for spending time with me over the last couple months, telling me about all the great things the foundation's doing and talking about the strategic plan and the process that's going through. So I thank you for your time and all of your service. I know you guys are doing a lot of great work and I'm finding that there's no more a committed group of people than there are at the foundation. So thank you for that. Also like to thank Director Gaston. Director Gaston's now at the point she's anticipating my questions and getting me information before I ask for it. So in line of some of that information that Director Gaston has provided and following up on what Alderman Bram was questioning, if you look at what I'll call a net city contribution to the museum. So once you take away all of the grant money, all of the good work the foundation's doing, all of the state grants that we've got, it's roughly, and Alderman Wagner touched on the IT expense, when you strip away all of that, the proposed 2014 budget compared to the actual full year of 2012-2013, it's roughly $46,000 incremental city dollars being spent. 10,000 of that was for the maintenance that Mr. Berghager talked about. There's payroll increases in there. There's conference additions to conference seminars and training, and then the chunk that Alderman Wagner talked about. But if you take that IT expense away, because that's equally distributed, it's roughly $46,000 incrementally being spent out of city funds. That equates to about a 6% increase over 2012-2013. It's a little steeper than I might like, and Mr. Berghager talked about the dramatic action of a couple years ago. I'm not proposing that, and I'm not going to make any motions. However, I will issue another challenge, or the challenge I guess I've issued previously, in looking at the revenue side of the actual museum operation. So taking away the work of the foundation, taking away the grants, it appears to me, if I caught all the revenue streams correctly, we're pretty flat compared to the previous year. Program fees are budgeted $3,000. That's roughly the same. I'm assuming those are the fees that we charge other museums to use our exhibits. Is that correct?
Well, those are also fees individuals pay for programs. Some programs have material fees, for instance, that type of thing.
Okay, so thank you for that. It appears that revenue line is flat. Given that we shudder to think, you mentioned shudder to think, I know the candy exhibit made some rotations. I believe the toy exhibit. I guess I would challenge museum staff. Are we charging other museums adequately for the value of the exhibit we're providing? I don't pretend I have an answer for that. I think I do. Given the great response these exhibits are getting in town, and the fact other museums are asking us to use them, I certainly think that's an opportunity to enhance our revenue. If nothing else, to offset our expense in putting those exhibits on, I think that would be an appropriate challenge. Merchandise sales, budgeted $8,000. Now, there was about a $2,700 increase over previous full year. That's great. Can we do more? And then the last revenue line I came across was donor gifts. Donors, which I assume are just that, money that's given to the museum, not to the foundation. Is that a correct assumption?
That's primarily a donation box at the entry of the museum.
So I don't know that you can force incremental donations. But I guess when I look at the total revenue line of the museum, I honestly believe there's an opportunity to do more. And when I look at what some of the other departments are doing that traditionally are non-revenue generating, and some of the actions they're taking, I'd like to see the museum be more active there. The news has been full lately and Alderman Gutenkopf knows this better than almost anybody because she's in the business. The museum business is tough these days. Revenue is hard to come by. And I understand that, but can we do more? Because the reality is, if the museum doesn't do more in revenue generation from daily operations, the only recourse you have is to come back and ask for more from, city cash, if you will. So the $46,000 I referenced, I would love to see a day where when the museum spends more city cash, it's because they've raised more cash. Again, the foundation and all the great work they're doing, dollar for dollar, that should go back in the museum to do greater, cooler, bigger things. But when it comes to day-to-day stuff and pay increases and leaky toilets, the operation of the museum, I would like to see, certainly in the strategic plan, that the museum funds itself initially for just the increases, and then long-term, can it be a self-sustaining museum? I don't know that it can, but that's certainly a goal that I'd like to see the museum strive for. So, again, no action. I'm not suggesting any action. I'm just continuing the challenge of, are we maximizing our opportunity at the museum to generate revenue from the, what I know to be thousands of people that are coming through that building, whether it's the museum or the one-room schoolhouse. I would challenge staff to generate incremental revenue so that actual city dollar expense is reduced. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or statements? Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. Listening to Alderman Healy, kind of a light bulb went off in my head, and I know we've had the opportunity to create some wonderful exhibits and have them shipped off elsewhere. Perhaps we could look around the country and see if there's any exhibits that we could use from other facilities and bring them in at a lower cost than what it would cost us to create them too. So that's just another kind of a thinking thing. And then Alderman Healy could always hang around the contribution box and encourage bigger donations there. So.
Okay, Alderman Levin.
I'm not sure why Alderman Healy's hanging around the contribution box, but this might be a question more for Director Gaston. If I do the math right on annualizing the 2013, it looks like there's a 5% increase in the personnel line. Am I reading that right? Yeah, personal wages, personal services.
The 405, 6?
Let's
So
see.
some of that we have in that line item, the coordinator position that we talked about earlier was not in the current year full year. It was an open position for a number of months. So in the current information, or the estimated 2013, and even going back into the actual 2012-13, there was one position that wasn't filled for at least 6 to 8 months of that time. So,
Actually,
but it's...
I see it's a little bigger there, but I guess my question really would be this: is there in terms of not with respect to new employees or filling positions, but are we using a certain rate for budget purposes on increases that we would apply over department?
Yes, and that in total, we're looking at a possible range adjustment for budget purposes of 2% and a 1% merit pool. So essentially 3%.
So anything over a 3% would be due to some other reason?
Some other reason, and for the most part, I think in the museum's case and some of the part-time positions not being filled part of the year, but being budgeted now for a full year.
Okay. All right, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Any other? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the questions that I noticed on page 87 was the 2014 expectations, and I just wanted to kind of get a little clarification on where we are today. The one that I highlighted was reaching 300 paid memberships in 2014. Excuse me. Where are we today, and do we think we are able to meet that expectation or exceed that expectation? A little bit of a crystal ball type of response here, but where are we today, and do we forecast?
It wasn't 300, we reached 215. And we broke, 200, which was really good because a lot of the museums are losing memberships. People with the economic downturn cannot afford that. So with us offering fee-based or value, I call, for what we are providing. We have exhibit receptions and different value-driven things that members have. My expectation is 250 for this year. That's what we're hoping to shoot for. And those are hard numbers. The good news is that we have a 2-year membership program that's going on, and that a lot of people are taking advantage of that. And because of that, that continuity will be there. There won't be that yearly membership. We actually have close to 100 people that have taken advantage of the 2-year membership. So we'll already start out with our renewal process of having 100 people, and then we'll just have to continually work to increase it. But our hope is 250. Membership is kind of interesting because what happens is it's a cultivation tool for donors. And what happens is when someone becomes a member and then really sees what is going on and what the value is of having a museum, they are a member in a different way. They give, a donation of a higher value, anywhere from, $200 and up, and they're not renewing their membership that I'm talking about. So there's a lot that goes into membership, a lot of yin and yang. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
I'd also add that our membership program is less than 2 years old, and it's in its infancy yet. And typically, a program that has a member for 3 years feels that they have the member hooked at that point. But there's a lot of movement in those first 3 years of an individual considering membership. And as Kathy mentioned, memberships are a wonderful way, a wonderful strategy to grow annual fund gifts, major gifts, maybe not next year, maybe not 3 years from now, but 10 years from now, and also sponsorships and bequests and memorials.
I just want to say, I concur with Alderman Healy's earlier comments, and I think that I've been a critic in years past of the museum and asking the museum to do more as well. And I will say, and I've given compliments in the past 2-3 years, I think that the museum has done an excellent job and has improved significantly compared to when my beginning of my tenure here on City Council. So I do want to give kudos to those who have worked on it the past few years. The reason why I asked about the memberships was because the expectation is 300 paid. I do understand it's in its infancy. And going from 250 to 300 by the end of next year is an admirable goal. But to kind of tail off of Alderman Healy's comments, hopefully we can continue to build that as just one other additional revenue stream. Thanks.
Okay, any additional comments or questions for the museum folks?
That bell means it's time for
Okay, seeing none, I'd like to thank Kathy and Brian for all their hard work and their time, and the rest of the members of the foundation who are with us at 10:47 at night. We appreciate it. City Manager Grabowski, I know we had set maybe another ambitious goal 45 minutes ago, almost an hour ago. I'm going to look to the City Council at this point to see if they want to continue. We've got some important stuff to discuss, and I don't know if doing it half asleep is going to work. Alderman Hipskin?
I agree doing it half asleep. There is some important stuff coming up, and I would like to postpone it to another night.
And I see some nods. Is that what we're looking for?
We're nodding.
Yes.
We're nodding.
The land of nods. It's the land of
Is
nods.
someone here from Visitors and Tourism so they don't have to come back? Maybe take care of that
Jim?
line item?
No.
No one additional, so.
Except for the fire.
We're kind of sticking it to Chief Bassador, but other than that,
He's a regular here.
but he's a regular. I think that's, I think I'm hearing a consensus. City Manager Grabowski, Director Gaston, I think we've kind of worn out. We're pushing 4 hours of straight meetings at this point. So I thank the council for their time and their effort. I ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman York, second by Alderman Lemon. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.